But the two big ones we're going to focus on today are going to be procrastination and distraction. So hopefully you like the flashcard technique I showed you last week, or all the different things we talked about. But if you never get to it, you can create the perfect flashcards. If you never look at them, they're not going to do you any good. And if when you are looking at them, you're not paying attention to them, they're not going to do you any good. So that's why procrastination and distraction are the two things we're going to focus on. Let's take that kind of evolutionary look, this ancestral look at our brain, and let's talk about why we do procrastinate. So the first thing I want to tell you there is that you are not in control, right? Your conscious mind is rarely ever in control. We like to think that we are, but our subconscious mind is way more powerful than our conscious mind. You know that if you've ever been on a diet, right? Anytime, think about the word willpower. Think about how hard it is to overcome the signals that come from your subconscious mind. Whether it's you're trying to quit smoking. Your conscious mind says, I no longer want to smoke. Your subconscious mind says, yeah, but nicotine's awesome. I really like it. And you go to battle, and you win some and you lose some. Same thing with diets. So the reality is your subconscious mind is in control most of the time. And that's especially true if you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired. All these other states, these emotional states actually make it even harder for our conscious minds to be in control. So the reason I tell you that is because we have a really hard time focusing on things where the only gratification we get is long-term gratification. Your brain's primary focus is keeping you alive right now. It's to seek pleasure and to avoid pain. So it's really hard to convince your brain that sitting down to study 3 hours a day is going to pay off with this degree years in the future. Your brain does not understand these goals, and if your brain can't grasp a goal that big, then it's going to fight you. And that's what procrastination is. It's actually painful to sit down. Now, no offense if you love math, but most research has been done on math. When people that don't like math sit down to study math, the pain centers in their brain are activated. It is literally painful to focus on something like that. So your brain's job is to avoid pain. So it says, you know what's not painful? Checking Facebook. Right? Checking Facebook isn't painful. Even things like smoking isn't painful in the short term. So go do those types of things. Go get a donut. That's great. That's instant gratification. So that's the problem. Your ancestral subconscious mind is trying to seek pleasure and avoid pain. You're trying to convince it of this payoff in the future. And that is a very, very big problem. So a couple examples I give here, donut versus diabetes. So you see a donut, your brain says, oh man, that is calories, sugar, fat, maybe a little bit of salt. These are the kind of things I need because my goal is to survive. But you say, man, I probably shouldn't have donuts all the time because I may get diabetes in the future. And that may lead to complications in the future. But you have to understand, your brain doesn't care about those mays. It's like, I need survival now. So the solution, so same thing with anything else. I don't know if you're into social media, but most of my students, when they sit down to study, the other tabs on their computer or their social media is what's calling them. So if you go on social media and say that, your picture got 3 more likes, that's a dopamine spike. That's instant gratification. There's no instant gratification for learning the bones, learning the muscles, learning the cranial nerves. There's none of it. So your brain sees that as a very, very easy solution. Go do the social media. Social media is designed, think about the amount of money and the brilliant minds that go into stealing your time. Because that's what social media has. The reason that Facebook and Twitter and these companies are worth so much money is because they're selling your attention. They're selling your time and your attention to advertisers. So they're very good at stealing your time and stealing your attention. They're doing exactly what your brain wants. Just like whoever makes Doritos, they know that when you eat a Dorito, your brain is going to get this instant gratification that it wants. Celery's not going to do that. Now you can choose celery, but is it harder to choose celery? Yeah. You can choose to study, but it's harder than choosing social media or something else that's distracting. So my students will sit down to do something they know is important, but they're going to constantly be pulled away. How do we solve this problem? How can we take this subconscious brain and convince it that we shouldn't be procrastinating? Well, I have several examples here. First thing is goal setting. Your goals need to be much smaller. You can't master a class in a day. You can't master a concept in a day. But what can you? What can you do? If your body's and brain's primary focus is making today successful, then your goals need to be a lot smaller. Your goals have to be things you can accomplish today. So don't make your goals too big. Same thing with to-do lists. I have a massive to-do list, but I write out 3 of them at a time. So I have 3 things on my to-do list that I actually see. I do have one with 1,600 items on it, I'm not gonna lie. But I have 3 of them on my whiteboard in my office at home. So, and I know I can accomplish those 3 things. So you have to make your goals small enough that your brain agrees you can do it. Because if you can't do it, then it's just painful and your brain would rather you go do something else. So it's very important that you make the goals you have small enough. But then here's usually the really good news. These goals have to come with rewards. So it's kind of, you have to trick your brain into doing what it doesn't want to do because of the reward. So what does the reward need to be? It needs to be rewarding. So that whatever that is for anyone. Now we'll talk about rewards a lot today. I think that rewards should be positive, right? Like if every time my students watch a video for my class or do something, taking a shot of whiskey is probably not the right reward. That's not very positive. Even things like if you're eating junk food, that's not good for your brain. So you want to make sure that your rewards are things that aren't hurting you in the long run, but you do have to have rewards, things you can look forward to. That way your brain will start to basically meld the two together. And we'll talk about the Pomodoro technique in a little while. If I can focus for 25 minutes, then I get this reward. And your brain starts to associate those 2 things. So it starts to associate that 25 minutes of focused work with the reward. So I can't tell you what that reward should be for you, but it does have to be rewarding, and it has to be something that you're looking forward to. So, and I believe we need, as students, especially going through long programs like nursing school or something, short-term, medium, and long-term rewards. So you should have short-term rewards that you get every time you do the right things, so on maybe a daily basis. But then you can have medium-term rewards. Maybe you'll go out to a fancy restaurant or buy a new piece of clothing every time you do everything you need to do for a week or something like that. And then longer-term rewards. When I accomplish this task, whether it's to learn a new musical instrument or to pass this class, then I have a longer reward, or a long-term reward, something bigger. So I've had students that have gotten jewelry, new vehicles, vacations, these kind of things. And that's totally fine, because if you're going to go to Disney World when you graduate nursing school, you should actually plan that in advance. Because the cool thing, it's awesome to surprise someone with the reward, but if you know it's coming, you're actually going to get more benefit out of it. So when you're slogging through your homework, and you can actually get some of the joy of going to Disneyland just by thinking about it and knowing that it's coming at the end. So rewards are not an option. They're critically important. If you're going to convince your brain to do what it doesn't want to do, there has to be a reward, or it's not going to be on your side. And as long as your brain isn't on your side, you're going to be distracted. You're going to be procrastinating. So you can overpower this. You can work really hard and fight through all of this, but it's much easier if you get your brain to go along for the ride. Goal setting, like I was thinking about like Mount Everest and the idea that the steeper the climb, the more stopping points and base camps there should be. Now think about Kilimanjaro, Mount Everest, these kind of places. Some of these milestones are actually the bodies of people that didn't make it. And there's something kind of significant to me there too, because we lose students all the time. We do everything we can not to, but the reality is people that don't do what they need to do as students, they're not as likely to make it. So I think there's something to be said for understanding that there's people that aren't going to get as far as you are because you're doing what you need to do and they didn't. So whether you want to call them base camps or literally just thinking of this mountain, I think there's about 200 bodies on Mount Everest right now. Like they literally serve as almost signposts for, I need to keep doing what I got to do or I'm going to end up there. Because you need to scare your brain. If you can't tease your brain along with rewards, then you do have to scare it. And I think those things will work. So there's going to be a lot of, or 2 animal eating stories here. How do you eat an elephant? Anybody ever heard that one? Anybody know how you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So you have these huge tasks. And if I'm trying to convince my brain that over the next 3 years or 11 years, if I'm going to be a neurosurgeon, and I'm thinking about I'm going to become a neurosurgeon, that is an unbelievable task. But how do you eat that elephant then? What are the things I have to do today, this week, this month that will lead to me being a neurosurgeon? That's this idea of eating an elephant. So making really small goals that you can accomplish. So I am not going to complete 1,600 things today, but there are 3 things that I will do today. And I think that's really important. And we'll talk about how to prioritize those 3 things when we get there. So what can you master today? No matter what you're trying to learn, no matter what new skill, what class you're in, what can you master today? And don't think beyond that, because if you master today, and then tomorrow you master tomorrow, and the next day you master the next day, you're going to get wherever you need to get, whether that's the musical instrument, whether that's becoming a neurosurgeon. So what can you master today? Your brain will get on board with that. All right, procrastination makes good planning impossible. So we have to talk about that because of this whole idea of spacing we covered last time. If you need to learn something and you have 6 hours to learn something, remember we said what's better? 6 hours at one time, an hour a day for 6 days, or 30 minutes a day for 12 days. The space repetition research says that 12 days, so it's the same 6 hours, but it's way more productive. So if you keep procrastinating, you can't use the techniques that science actually say are helpful. And then you're forced to cram. What happens when you cram? Learn a bunch of information, lose it just as quickly. So that's why we cannot procrastinate. So how do you eat your frogs? So this is a weird diet. So elephants and frogs. So you eat your elephants one bite at a time, but you eat your frogs. This actually comes from a Mark Twain quote. He said, if your job is to eat a frog, eat it first thing in the morning. And if your job is to eat 2 frogs, eat the biggest one first. So you need to prioritize and plan your schedule the opposite of procrastination. Do the things that are the hardest to do early. Get it out of the way, right? So in the morning, if you can, should be when you work on the things that you're most likely to procrastinate. Never put something on the end of your schedule that you're more likely to then push off to tomorrow. If I save my biggest frog for tonight, I'm probably going to say, you know what, I'll worry about that frog tomorrow. So you eat that big old frog in the morning, or eat it first. Say the things that are on the end of your day, the last thing on your to-do list should be the thing you're most looking forward to. So if you got a frog to eat, or if you got an elephant to eat it one bite at a time. If you have frogs to eat the biggest one first. So understand that's actually a really interesting, I love that, that quote. But eat your biggest frog first.